and welcome to Basic Folk, where we have honest conversations with folk musicians on the Bluegrass Situation Podcast Network. Hello, it's me, Cindy Howes, your host. So nice to have you here. Thanks for being here. Oh man, Bonnie Prince Billy, Will Oldham himself, is on the podcast today, and I feel like this is a really good one. I always get kind of psyched up when an artist that I've been listening to for decades comes on the pod, but he was just a really cool guy to talk to. So looking forward to sharing that. Before we dive in, have you signed up for Basic Folks newsletter? It is a once-a-month email, comes into your inbox and lets you know what is going on with the Folk Pod. You can sign up at basicfolk.com, or there's a link in the show notes. You can follow us on social media at Basic Folk Pod, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and I've been trying out Blue Sky, but my posts have been failing to post. But I'll keep trying. So you can find us on Blue Sky. We are a listener-supported podcast. You can make a donation. basicfolk.com/donate, or link in the show notes. You can give $5 a month and get a Basic Folk beanie. They are handmade by this podcast's mother. All right, how are you doing? Hope everything is okay with you. As we speak right now, if you're listening to around when this episode releases, myself and Lizzie No are up in Alaska doing some live shows up there. It was a huge adventure in planning this and getting all the travel together. We'll be sure to share pictures and stories on social media of what it was like. But thanks to Parlor in the Round for bringing us up there in the first place. We've had a really busy March. We were just on Kayamo on the cruise, getting some interviews there for the podcast. Now we're in Alaska. And then I think we're going to just need to sit still for a little while. But we're having such a great 2025. Okay, let's dive into this interview. Will Oldham, also known as Bonnie Prince Billy, has led an illustrious, sometimes mysterious career which has spanned decades and genres. Hailing from and still living in Lexington, Kentucky, Will reflects on his journey from a young artist struggling to find his place in the music world to a seasoned musician who embraces collaboration and creativity. We dive into his latest album, The Purple Bird, discussing the pivotal role of producer David Ferguson in his artistic evolution. Will reveals how working with Ferguson and a host of talented Nashville musicians transformed his songwriting process and solidified his sense of belonging in the music community. With a mix of humor and heartfelt honesty, he describes the joy of collaboration and the unique energy that comes from working with seasoned artists, particularly those from older generations. Throughout our conversation, Will touches on the contrasting emotions evoked by his songs, especially when dealing with serious themes wrapped in upbeat melodies. He draws parallels to the works of Phil Ochs, highlighting the importance of addressing difficult subjects through art. As we wrap up, Will shares personal anecdotes about his family and the influence of his daughter on his music. Thanks to Will for making a wonderful record. If you haven't listened to it, The Purple Bird is really great, and for being so willing to get seriously deep into some of its themes. We'll take a listen to a clip from the song Our Home, which appears on Purple Bird, and then we'll get to our conversation with Will Oldham, otherwise known as Bonnie Prince Billy, on Basic Folk.
Make our furthest horizon the end of the street. That's how we make it our home. Look in the eyes of the people we meet. That's how we make it our home. We thank the Lord before we break bread. That's how we make it our home. We never forget the names of our dead. That's how we make it our home. Batten the hatches when the cold wind blows. Save some for tomorrow, 'cause you never can know when the hard times are coming to push you down low. You're only as good as the people you know. Harvest the honey and string up the beans. That's how we make it our home. Do it by hand says, and pull up a chair. That's how we make it our home. Nobody's perfect and nobody cares. That's how we make it our home. Stare at the sunset and nod at the wall. Winter and spring and summer and fall. Answer the door when your friends come to call. There's not that much to it, no real work at all.
Will Oldham, welcome to Basic Folk. This is a dream come true. It's really nice to have you.
It's really nice to be here, Cindy.
So I come from a radio background, so this is just like kind of a guilty pleasure question. I don't know if it's a guilty pleasure or not, but it's a selfish question for sure. You were talking to The Guardian recently and you shared, I fucking love radio, momentarily loving the relationship of the DJ to that piece of music. I don't need anything else. Awesome. What has your love for radio looked like throughout your life, and how do you relate to radio as a listener? And how do you relate to radio as a professional musician?
I've had a long life, and so it's a long and complicated, because I can remember as a kid in the 1970s having certain songs that we want to hear on the radio and sitting by the telephone and calling the DJs, and getting busy signals and calling, for 20, 30 minutes at a time until we finally get through. And then we'll say, would you please play Beth by Kiss or something like that? And that was an option to do. Then I can remember the coming and going and changing of formats at different radio stations growing up and appreciating, for example, when there was a great AM classic country station for the first time in Louisville in the late 1980s when I was in my late teens. And that was a thing that I was thrilled about. My friends were thrilled about. And I can remember specifically sitting in a gravel parking lot by the apartment of a friend and hearing this Willie Nelson song, I'd Have to Be Crazy, come on the radio, and being just a mind blown, deeply moved, thrilled, or listening on the way to school on the AM radio to the local R&B station and thinking, Whitney Houston sounds really good compressed and mono on AM, potentially more so than full stereo clarity of an FM station. And then getting into playing music professionally in the 90s, in my 20s, and touring and visiting radio stations and being on the other side of the telephone line, because I love going on the radio and getting call-ins and talking to people. It's just that kind of shared intimate space is very thrilling and exciting, having been on the other side when I was a kid, Mm-hmm. And then I began in the mid to late 90s, I began to do, because at the time I made a living from selling records, which is not something that we do anymore because of streaming. So I would feel like a kind of a way of saying thank you and re-engaging and meeting people would be I did a series of free tours where I would go out and play record stores and radio stations in different parts of the world. Say, okay, this is a free tour. Every show is free because I'm either going to play in a record store or a radio station. And those were also because, I had made my living. I had made my living selling records, and sort of kind of a thank you and you go into these radio stations and the DJs turn you on to records that you'd never heard before, or you just see a pile and you sort through and they say anything you want to play, or we got 2 copies of that new record. You're welcome to take one home with you. And then in more recent years, specifically like here in Louisville, Kentucky, some very enterprising, brilliant, wonderful people got it in their head that they wanted to start a new community radio station in Louisville.
Right on.
10 years ago or so. WXOX 97.1 low power station that is also streaming through a free app, and employing, and they're not employing, but they're not paying anybody, but they are engaging the time and inspired curatorial skills of about 150 DJs at any given time who are playing, have an hour or 2 hour show throughout the week. And that's been just a constant source of inspiration and intrigue and renewal and for the past decade or so. And then there are wonderful things like NTS, which I absolutely love NTS, as well as the app Radio Garden, because there's now about 6 or 7 stations globally, mostly on the African continent, I think, that I'll listen to regularly, that are just broadcasting live, and you can listen to them live through Radio Garden. And it's just, there's, fortunately I haven't heard it in a while, but whenever anybody says, I don't know what to listen to anymore, I'm tired of listening to music, I just think, what are you thinking? Right. What's wrong with you? What's going on in your world? Yeah.
Cool. Great warm-up question. Let's get into this record.
Yeah, okay.
The Purple Bird. So this is, I like to ask adjacent record questions. So you had a hard time calling yourself an artist for a really long time, even though you longed for musical community, as we all do. After you met David Ferguson, who produced The Purple Bird and set you up with your co-writers on this record, it seems like Ferg holds the keys to the kingdom for you, like musically speaking. You've worked with him on many projects before, but this was like the biggest one. How have his actions strengthened your sense of belonging over the years, and how did that change while writing and recording The Purple Bird?
One thing, and I wonder if you have in your life a comparable occurrence where I think as a kid, I had envisioned, I thought that I was going to be involved with acting. I was involved with acting on the stage and in film and TV, things like that. And there were things that it made me feel like what I witnessed when I would see a play, when I would see a great movie and see performances that just really lit me up. I would project upon those artists, we'll call them, a lifestyle, an approach to life, an approach to living, an approach to other people, an approach to their work that I think wasn't far off the truth at that time in say the 1980s, but has changed significantly. And then I would listen to records, and I would see, and all my friends played music, were in bands, and I would see practices, and I would listen to their records, and then I had my favorite records. And I would think, I wouldn't understand what was different, say, between what the kind of DIY punk scene and the way that they approached, the underground music scene, the way they approached building songs, making records, making music, and the difference between that and certain other records. You could say country music records, like Conway, Twitty and Loretta Lynn records from the early 1970s, for example. And I would keep trying to push myself towards an existence that could be responsible for the creation of certain kinds of music, and never quite getting there, and going to countless very, very interesting and fulfilling and surprising places along the way, thinking, I'm on the yellow brick road, but nothing looked like what you thought it was going to look like on the yellow brick road. And so you make do, and you make new things, which is our job anyway. We don't want to make old things. We want to make new things. And it was only once I went to Nashville and started to play with certain people there and communicate with certain people that I found that all of this way of approaching music was not a fantasy. It was a reality. And it was the everyday reality of certain session musicians, certain producers, certain songwriters, and certain singers. All those singers, people always say, you have so many records, and I think, well, I'm just singing. I'm just doing this. This is my job. What am I supposed to do? Like make a record and then sit around for a couple of years? I don't get it. And I think even in Nashville, singers aren't, songwriters can work every day if they want to. Session musicians can work every day if they want to. But a singer, I guess, has the risk of overexposure or something like that. Which is why, I'd sort of like to get a job under an assumed name as a backup singer so that I could just honestly go to work every day and just sing. But Ferg, that's his, he worked in the best. He worked under Cowboy Jack Clement. He worked with Johnny Cash. He would work with Waylon Jennings or Charlie Pride or Don Williams kind of people, and have this experience of working with some of the best songwriters alive and working in the English language, at least in the United States of America. And he's somebody who just doesn't have a lot of time or space for BS in his life, and would these days I think kind of only go to work when he knows that the people who are there kind of know what they're doing and take it seriously, and including having fun very seriously.
Yeah, fun. That was my next question is actually about fun.
Good.
You describe Ferg as a giant of a man, an epic musical force, a dear friend. And then listening back to Purple Bird, you say, I can't help but laugh and wonder that life allowed me to participate in such a thing. So it sounds like working with Ferg, working on this project was so fun.
It was so fun.
What does Ferg do to make a project so special and fun? Like, what is the Ferg secret sauce?
People. I think at this point, it's having developed relationships with people whose skills, abilities, whose willfulnesses and desires complement each other and complement his. And it's so specific what it takes to go and make this kind of record, and it takes access, and access is crucial. And Ferg provided the access, and it was an earned access over 20 years of having a relationship with Ferg. But it's people who show up and know how to bring their A game. And no, I love the old cartoons, Warner Brothers cartoons with the sheepdog and the coyote, and they would, clock in, morning, George, morning, Ralph. And then as soon as they're clocked in, they're enemies. And the coyote's trying to eat the sheep, and the sheepdog's doing everything he can to destroy the coyote's every effort to eat the sheep. And then at the end of the day, after beating the crap out of each other, they clock out. And they say, okay, see you tomorrow. We're no longer enemies. And I think of the Nashville songwriters and session people the same way. Like you walk into the room and they're unassuming and joking and eating Jelly Bellies and talking about life. And then it starts, the music starts, and there's no stopping it. And it's furious and complex and wonderful and fun. And everybody's really super focused on it. And then at the end of the day, it has to be done, and it is done. And people clock out and say, okay, see you tomorrow. And I kind of wish that I could do it just every single day.
Nice day, huh, Sam? Yep. Good to be alive, Ralph.
When Ferg set you up with all these Nashville heavy hitters, including a hero of yours, John Anderson, you thought, I knew about Nashville writing sessions, but had never participated in one. They are legendary, these Nashville writing sessions. What did the anticipation look like for you versus like the reality of the Nashville writing session? I mean, you just described Jelly Bellies in the studio. I don't know what else we can go after there, but if you could.
Well, another really wonderful thing about this record is that there was no real anticipation, because it occurred to Ferg to suggest that we do a writing session. After 20 years of spending time with him, he'd never really suggested it before. He suggested it, so we did it. But he'd never suggested it before. He'd never said, "Oh, what would you think about this?" or described anything like what his experience was with them. So it always sounded kind of banal to me, from the recountings of other writers that I knew. And But under Ferg's authority, it is not banal because there's nothing that Ferg does that's banal besides maybe watch a little too much television.
Me too, Ferg.
Yeah, we get in there with Ferg and whoever else he's invited in who's accepted the invitation. The first one was Pat McLaughlin and ultimately John Anderson and Roger Cook, and it's electrifying. I've often compared it to, especially because the memory of watching them this past summer is so fresh in my mind, but watching Olympic athletes who are, whatever, they put their makeup on, comb their hair, insist on far too many sequins for their gymnastics outfits.
Never too many sequins.
Never too many sequins, exactly. They, and then they go out and just nail it. And nail things that they've only imagined or they've practiced and never imagined that they could accomplish, especially not in the heat of the moment, and or knowing like that they have to. But we go in there. It's the whole ridiculous world that we live in, and then you find out if you are in shape enough to make a song happen, and there really isn't an alternative. You kind of just have to. So yeah, the expectation, there was no expectation going because that I'd never experienced before. Although I did, there's a fellow named Vince Emmett, who's a producer and a songwriter. And maybe 10 or 12 years ago, he invited me to his house and said, let's write a song. And so we wrote a song, but I didn't know he was abiding by a format of Nashville songwriting. And I only now, looking back, I wrote him a letter a couple of weeks ago. I said, Vince, you introduced me to this process. You never told me that's what you were doing, because we just wrote the craziest song also. And he just let himself go into my world of deeper abstraction than he probably was accustomed to.
Huh. So cool.
Yeah, it was so cool. And here we were, 3 people, which is, it's pretty neat to triangulate. Instead of just 2 people writing a song, to have at least 3 people. And in one instance, there were 4 of us writing. But 3 people who admire, like, and trust each other for a variety of reasons. Yeah, and you don't know where. A friend yesterday said, sent me an email, said, I really like the bridge of Boise. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure that I can claim responsibility for that bridge. I felt like, I think that the bridge was something that I was protective of, like an orphan child. Like, I found it in the middle of the writing session, and as the song moved around, I kept huddling around this bridge and protecting its existence, thinking like, this bridge is going to be important to this song. But I don't know if that's right, because there were so many things happening, and I couldn't tell you who came up with the chorus, for example, or anything like that. But I just feel like the bridge was mine. But it's that's just to describe the wonderful. Once you're in it, and you can't really tell until you come up for air in the end that a song is happening until it exists.
Kind of almost sounds like a horror movie.
It is kind of like a horror movie, yeah. Southern Gothic horror movie.
Your singing voice, everyone loves it. It's always been a distinct part of the Bonnie Prince Billy Will Oldham adjacent package. On The Purple Bird, you sound the most joyful I have ever heard you. You also recently commented that your singing, I thought this was really cool to think about. Your singing can sound different when you collaborate with different people. It's almost kind of like your speaking voice can sound different depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
So with all these new collaborators on the record, what did you discover about your voice, your musicality?
Well, I made a record with an A team of Nashville session folks before in something like 2004. I'm just going to guess it was around that year. Pre-COVID, yeah, for sure. It was, Bonnie Prince Billy Sings Greatest Palace Music. And in there, I have this experience a lot where I had never heard myself sing that way, in the way that I sing on that record. And I'm experiencing it in the room because we're recording live, and I'm hearing myself sing with these amazing musicians, and my voice fits, and my ability to navigate what they're creating is sound and functional. And it was a huge moment to think, and also just the difference between any given performer or any given artist and success with communicating what it is she or he would like to communicate is so dependent upon environment, I guess. But then back here 20 years later, almost 20 years later, to be back in with people who I just couldn't believe. Yeah, I couldn't believe how professional my voice sounded. Yeah. Yeah. And it was, but it was just happening. It was, at first also even Ferg said, well, after we do this, I'll probably ask you to re-sing a bunch of these vocals. And then when we got into the mix stage, I said, Ferg, I'm not sure. I think these might be okay. And he's like, yeah, I've been listening to them. Yeah, they're pretty good. I don't think we have to redo them.
Nice.
And yeah.
Score another one for Will.
Yeah, but I don't, but understanding exactly why. I mean, they know, we're dependent upon each other as musicians, as an ensemble. And I think that these kinds of musicians, these session musicians, part of their skill set, a required part of their skill set is that they are supportive, that they recognize what needs to be supported and then show up just, they are team players like the Chicago Bulls of 20 years ago. Or
do you think that if you went into a studio with like noobs who are like new to their instruments and this is their first recording session, that you could sound like you do on the Purple Bird?
No, I don't know, because I've done it before. And it's, sometimes I'll be in with noobs or doing something with people who are just maybe not as, haven't had the opportunity to hone their abilities to the extent that these folks have. And I'll sing with them and I'll just think, where is my voice? Why don't I have the confidence? I still have a lot of access to my voice, but nothing
like this.
I'm hoping that I am potentially lifting the general performance with my experience. But
are you a really empathetic person?
Yeah.
Yeah. To absorb other people's energy and moods and stuff.
Definitely. Yeah.
This sounds connected to that somehow.
Yeah. We've been rehearsing for a tour out west. We'll go there in a couple of days. And, as a trio, and my cousin was in town for a funeral over the weekend. And he's a brilliant composer, piano player, and he's gonna join us in Los Angeles for a couple of shows. And immediately we were a quartet then, and immediately I'm thinking, I'm not the same singer that I was 3 days ago when we were a trio. And one day maybe I'll be able to identify. Yeah, now I'm just still wonderstruck and delighted and somewhat confused at the difference in the singing between the trio and the quartet. But it seems absolutely measurable. And if you heard a recording of us doing the same song 4 days ago versus 2 days ago, you would think like it was 6 months apart or 6 years apart, or that I was wasted during one. And it's not extreme, but it's kind of extreme.
Yeah. Wow. Well, shout out to noobs. Keep
shout
going.
Out to noobs. Yeah.
Okay. Aside from young Tommy Prine, who's John Prine's son, it seems like all of your co-writers were in their 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Indeed. Yes.
So what's been your experience with collaborating with older generations? So I've spoken to Tim O'Brien on this podcast before and spoken to a couple of other greats from that generation. And they always seem like so encouraging of younger generations. So I'd love to hear your experience. Have you been encouraged, discouraged, inspired, challenged, changed?
Yeah, it was, as a quick aside, it blew my mind when we were recording. It was right when Tim was turning 70. And it was funny because I've known him for a number of years and I never looked up his birthday or anything. And, we were in Ferg's little mixing room in Goodlettsville, Tennessee, and I'm looking at Tim and thinking, man, this like 56-year-old guy sure has questionable posture. I guess he just hasn't known how to, and then 5 minutes later, I hear that he's just turning 70. And I'm like, okay.
Fountain of youth. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Fountain of Youth. Oh my gosh, Tim O'Brien. And see, I know I have, there's a favorite song of mine from the past decade, and it might even be 10 years old. It's from a guy named Sam Gleaves. Do you know Sam Gleaves' music at all? Mm-hmm. And he has the title song of a CD of his, Ain't We Brothers, and Tim O'Brien plays on that. And it's such a remarkable and moving song. And knowing that, I don't know how it happened, but knowing Tim now, it just happened because Tim is Tim and Sam is Sam. But it is amazing. And it's a dream of mine. Even when I was 17, 18 years old, I would be listening to records and thinking like, oh, I don't really like records by people in their late 20s. I like records by people in their late teens and early 20s because that's where I am. And then as I would get older, I would think like, oh yeah, I'm kind of, I don't understand when it's hard to go back and listen to music by even somebody like Hank Williams and think like, well, fuck, he was 29, he died at 29, it's all kid stuff.
Yeah.
This is all children's music. And so when
I've thought about this before,
right? It's
like, oh my God,
should we be listening to these things? Or the Ramones, like yeah, come on. And then, the opposite side of that is that to be allowed participation with any of these people at all. We see it in politics sometimes, unfortunately. So, that advanced age has its place. And then in music, oftentimes people think of advanced age as being a strike against a musician or the music that they create. And maybe with pop stars, that's the case because by the time they're 60, they've spent so much time wasted on things like image that their music isn't that compelling by the time they're 60.
Why don't you name some names? Just kidding.
I mean, the adorable dressing room. I saw that, there's an adorable dressing room video on the internet of Joni Mitchell with some young people and Sir Elton John, sitting there like, your old overweight grandma with a cane singing I'm Still Standing. And it was kind of beautiful on some levels. But I wouldn't say that Elton John is somebody whose music evolved, over the past 30 years, or his vocal abilities. For a fairly remarkable singer in his youth, he didn't translate that into a remarkable singer in his old age, which you can do because Joni Mitchell has done it and Merle Haggard did it, and John Anderson has done it, where you can't wait to hear their next record or see them live because you want to hear what they're doing with their changing voice, that they're becoming, that is, the voice itself is changing. And so their relationship is changing and they're like, no, it's still my instrument. It's but I have a different, I'm learning things about my instrument. And I feel like all of these folks that Ferg brought to our various tables on this record are people who aren't done by any stretch of the imagination. Stuart Duncan, unbelievable, the things that he pulls out and the way that he can, it's not necessarily even finding the heart of the song because we as a group are creating a new heart of the song in those moments. But how can they have such incredible openness and attention? And it's because we are societally, obviously we're told that age is something to be avoided at all costs, and that it's never really made sense to me.
All right, buckle up. This is a long setup for this one.
Woo! Where are you, by the way?
Portland, Maine.
Oh, sweet. I was just playing with one of my closest colleagues of the past few years so far is a woman who's based out of Biddeford.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay.
We just played at Rough Trade in New York City last week. It's
Nice.
Elizabeth Fuchsia. Yeah, she's a viola player.
I do not know her, Elizabeth Fuchsia, but I'll look her up.
Big Trash. She's been making music as Big Trash. She's cassettes on Bandcamp. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the hot tip. I'm kind of new to Maine, so I'm looking for...
Oh.
I'm open to new people and new things.
Fine. She goes by Fuchsia. She's her showbiz name is Elizabeth Fuchsia, but she goes by Fuchsia. Yeah, she's wonderful.
Cool. In thinking about reinterpretation and rearrangement of songs and how that can change meanings and change states of mind when you're listening, there are 2 songs on this record that stand out to me. Your cover of Is My Living in Vain, which is originally performed by the Clark sisters. Their version is like this, leave it all out on the stage, gospel blowout, where they're doing that like, like that gospel noise.
They push it into like funk and prog sometimes with their songs.
Yeah, it's outer space. Yours is a very quiet version of Is My Living in Vain. The second one is Guns Are for Cowards. And you were playing it out live as like a subdued solo song, which, full transparency, I have not heard that, but I can imagine that in my mind as like a solo, quiet, serious moment on stage. You played it for Ferg. He was like, Willie, the only way we can record this is as a polka. So both songs are completely flipped.
Yeah.
So what can you say about like both states of mind when you've experienced both of them on these songs, like the sparse and contemplative side of a song, and then the blowout, loud in your face arrangement?
I think it's nice, I ended up, I brought the Clark sisters rearrangement, to this scenario. So I brought it to them, and they sort of built around what I had. And then Guns Are for Cowards is kind of the opposite. I mean, where I brought just a song that I've only ever played by myself for audiences, and then they surrounded it with Ferg's vision of the song as a lively, to say the least, polka. But I think one of the things that keeps me going, keeps me engaged in making music and approaching songs is the idea that, especially, one thing I love about making records is that a song can be anything, and what it ends up at any given performance, or sometimes it can be multiple things in one performance, is going to be based on responsive, potentially empathetic reaction to the energies being brought in by the various players and the audience, and even witnesses who might not identify themselves as audience or player. For example, a sound engineer, or a passerby. And that, something happens, and I don't know if you play music. Do you play music?
I'm just learning guitar.
Right on. But you're a noob. You're a noob, but you're an engaged listener, right? You're an invested listener, and the experience of the expansion of time that we experience when we're inside of a song, and it can happen very dramatically as a listener. It can oftentimes happen exponentially more dramatically when you're performing. You're inside of the song, and it becomes something that we would call like a month-long experience, as opposed to a 3.5 minute experience. And inside of that, there are all of these decisions and directions that can happen. We can pull it down, push it out, slow it down, sparsen it up, fill it in, change the rhythms, change the time signature in the middle of the song if we want to. And it's, the world is your oyster. You could do anything with it, and then that you have to then make certain very important decisions if you want the song to have an effective existence in that moment, for the recording or for the live show. So you like with Guns Are for Cowards, I knew that it could, when Ferg said it's got to be a polka, I knew that it could withstand that. And not only could it withstand it, but it made it very exciting to then hear the song through Ferg's ears right away. And every choice that I made as a singer and subsequently as a assistant producer, in speaking of arrangements and things like that, were going to be made turning it into a song that my friend and hero David Ferguson understood and appreciated, as opposed to, if I play it before, when I would play it just for an unsuspecting audience, I'd think, okay, I'm going to deliver this Guns Are for Cowards and we'll see how, and it's got significant, it's so tiny, it's such a tiny little song, but it has significantly different parts to it emotionally. And so it's, you learn each time I play it in front of an audience, I think, okay, is this going to be a moment of release or a moment of tension, a moment of despair, a moment of sadness, a moment of humor? How much of it is, or it's going to be a mix of all these things? And how much should I lean into this? Should I be trying to light a fire under the audience in terms of how they think, or should I be allowing them to feel release because they feel stress when it comes to thinking about guns in the hands of their fellow human beings? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if that is answering the question.
Listen, I'm enjoying the ride.
Okay, good.
Okay, so Guns Are for Cowards, a little bit more on this song. Like I feel like this is like a you said unsuspecting audience, and like this is like a dangerous song for an unsuspecting audience. It's like a jaunty, fun-loving arrangement encased in a very serious message. And it kind of reminded me, there's a couple songs that came to mind. Phil Oakes, Outside a Small Circle of Friends, that's like, there's it sounds like a piano parlor and there's like people being attacked and raped in it. Warren Zevon's Excitable Boy. Randy Newman has a bunch of these songs. These are songs that like make my skin crawl and my hair curl, but I think it's like really important to hear them and to take in how you're feeling when you're hearing them. I remember getting into an argument with my program director when it was like Warren Zevon's birthday and he wanted to play, like he was like, here are the Warren Zevon songs you're going to play on your show. And one of them was Excitable Boy. And I was like, no, this is like not a fun happy birthday Warren Zevon song. Like out of context, like I didn't think it worked, but I also understand it's an important song that we should listen to. But like, what do you think? Like, what's your experience with songs like this? I was trying to find like a word for this, but the best I can come up with is like upbeat songs with dark lyrics. Like, can you just like throw them on in the car with your friends, windows down? Like, what's happening to you when you hear a song like that?
And I don't know that Zevon song, and I don't know my Randy Newman very well, but I do know Phil Oakes very, very well.
I'm going to send you some YouTube videos.
Okay, good.
I'm glad you know the Phil Oakes song.
And it's also great, wonderful, funny, because in the course of the past couple of months of talking about this record, I've brought up that specific song. It wasn't anything that I had thought of. Yeah, high five. It wasn't anything ever that I thought consciously of prior to the past couple months, but Phil Oakes is easily one of the more important artists in my, influence artists of my life, and has been since I was a kid. Oh. And so I started to think, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, I think I've actually written my first Phil Oakes song with this Guns Are for Cowards song. And in talking to people, I would say, it's like Outside of a Small Circle of Friends. And I would, quote lyrics and it is, and it Phil Oakes gets labeled rightly so for the most part as a protest singer, but he does stand alone in terms of his ability to approach a political topic or political theme or issue and really, use it almost like Oliver Stone does in making movies, in saying like, well, this serves the art and the art serves the issue, both. Whereas most political songs, it's usually the issue, is the dominant thing, and it may not stand without, the art isn't as strong as the issue. But it seems like Phil Ochs was always trying to, force people to think by jarring them with terrifying images as well as sweet, compelling, romantic images. But in the case of Outside of a Small Circle of Friends, it's like...
He's like the anti-Pete Seeger.
He's like the anti-Pete Seeger, yeah.
But they're on the same team.
Yeah. But yeah, I think... I don't... like at this point in my life, to be able to come up with a song that does... Yeah, and people have never heard the song before usually, up to this point. And I'll start it and... people are hooked right away and they don't know what's coming. And then I feel I feel both super, super guilty for hitting them with the second verse. And also, I think, at that moment, I'm scared to get to the second verse. And I feel intimidated by just what I've gotten myself into. And then I also, say to myself, well, it's a song and it has started and you're going to finish this song and you're going to have to find the strength to sing this second verse and share your intimidation with the audience. Let them experience a little bit of misgivings and fear and dismay at what they're experiencing and what they've potentially, begun to sway along to and sing along to, and that it's applied like musicology or applied folklore education, or it's a song with a absolute purpose and function, and Ferg sort of gave it a shot of steroids with his brilliant suggestion of polkifying it.
Yeah, it just takes it, all that you said just takes it to a new level.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one more question and then a quick Louisville-themed lightning round.
Gotcha.
This is an all-male record, aside from Britt Taylor.
So Britt Taylor, yeah.
Singing harmonies.
And me, because I sometimes feel like...
neutral.
Yeah,
cool.
At best.
Same. So, all guys. You did have your daughter around in the studio for a little bit, your 5-year-old daughter, which must have been very cute.
It was great.
Can you describe the type of male energy? Because I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about this, because I sometimes will ask, like, if women are on Basic Folk, I'll be like, female energy, tell me about being a woman and stuff. But like this, I just thought it might be interesting to hear the type of male energy that you felt during the writing and recording session. And then on the flip side of that, like, where does feminine energy appear on the record?
Yeah, and I'd like to, I'm not sure that it's necessarily in Ferg's wheelhouse if we were to try to repeat any aspects of the process that were that we built Purple Bird with. If we did it again in any way, if he would have access to female songwriters, for example, or what kind of female session players there might be in Nashville that Ferg would be able to reach out to. And wonderfully, it didn't have, I'm not a guy's guy, and I don't know if all of these people weren't, or if it was just an extension of their beautiful responsiveness, professional responsiveness that they display in their musicality. If similarly, I don't know what it is to have, like locker room humor kind of, I have a feeling that, that it can get a lot grosser than, I can get gross in my conversation, but it's gender neutral repulsivity. I find, when I'm touring, it's kind of crucial to have at least, at least one woman traveling with us, because I think I'm aware that when men feel comfortable being men, that the world isn't as fun of a place to me. It was, I knew early on, because maybe 6 months or a year before the session, Ferg had played me some Brit Taylor music in his car, and I immediately, I could only think of getting the opportunity to sing with her because of the way that her voice struck me. My brain responds to certain voices in the way I feel like the singer is applying herself or himself to the task at hand. And Brit's an obviously tremendously fluent singer who knows that she doesn't have to demonstrate how great she is every time she sings a song. And you can hear that in a simple song. You can hear like, oh, she could do anything right now, and she's choosing to just sing this song in this way, which is my favorite kind of singer. So I knew from the beginning of tracking that Britt was going to be coming in and singing, even though at that point I had not even met her face to face. And I also know that I've got a girl dog, I've got a daughter and a wife, so I live surrounded by females, and that the songs and as they say, like I understand that of many traditional markers of modern American masculinity or femininity, I check a lot of the boxes on the F side as opposed to the M side, except I wouldn't be allowed in the restrooms of certain churches in the southeastern United States, probably, if I wasn't going into the men's room. So I kind of wish, Cindy, that I could bring you in a time machine into the Cowboy Arms Hotel and Recording Spa to witness and then tell me what you hear, because it doesn't, there's a lot of music that, I have some friends who have started a group recently called the Hard Quartet. It's like a rock group. And when I'm like, yeah, it sounds like guys playing basketball together, which is not to say anything except I just don't do that. There's a lot of like music that sounds like it smells like gym socks, and dudes are cool with that. And that's not music that sounds like music to me. Music sounds like music to me when what? Like what? Because it's
the heart opens.
Well, yeah, it's the heart but opening, and I am not one to necessarily. It's only, you look around and you say, okay, I guess we could call that feminine energy. I don't think of that because I'm like, well, where does that leave me? Am I a woman because I have this open heart feeling, or should we be defining it differently as we are struggling right now to define all sorts of aspects of what gender is? And I mean, it feels to me, and the cover is, I've got the back cover photo was taken by a passerby on the beach woman of, two girls and a guy. And the front cover is painted by Lori Damiano. And I feel like it just doesn't feel like a man's record, I guess. Yeah. But I don't know why I think that. Yeah.
Oh, that was cool. It's cool to hear from you about that. Thank you. Thanks for answering.
Right on.
All right. Lightning round.
All right.
Louisville, Kentucky. I had some help writing some of these.
With some Louisvillians?
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
One in particular, who is an upright bass player that, I don't know if you know her or not, but her name now is Liz Dutton, but it used to be Liz Adams.
Okay, no. Living in Louisville now?
No, she lives in Columbus now.
Columbus, Ohio?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to write her name down, though.
Okay. Liz Dutton.
Yeah.
She is now she and her husband are like design and architect. If you're looking for some fancy ass, beautiful architecture work or design.
Beautiful. What do they have a company? Do you know what the company's called or anything?
So they each have their own company, and I think it's just their names. So like be Liz Dutton Interior.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's a total Louisville person.
All right. What's she got for us?
Okay. So this one was by me.
Okay.
Where are we getting coffee in Louisville?
Well, it kind of depends on what part of town you're going to be in. Did I get a coffee out today? No, I didn't get a coffee out today. I mean, usually I get my coffees at home now, but I would probably go to a place called Grail House, which is usually if someone says, well, let's meet for breakfast or lunch, it's a breakfast lunch place. I will go there, and they are very attentive to the details of food and beverage, and their coffee's pretty great. We wonderfully there's a local little chain called Quills, and Quills about a year ago opened a block from our house. So if ever I just want to go for a walk and get a coffee, that's the closest place I'll go.
That's the go-to. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we going to the baseball bat museum? And if so, are we taking a picture with the giant bat?
I went to the baseball museum with my daughter about a year ago for the first time, relatively reluctantly. And it was fantastic. It was a great experience. I didn't expect, you're in there, you're watching them make baseball bats, and I was with a 5-year-old girl watching baseball bats be made in a factory, and we both had a ball. That said, a friend of mine was visiting town about 6 months ago, and with her 2 boys, and we met for breakfast, and her boys had these hats that were bananas. I think it might be it was the Savannah Bananas. And we were about to leave for tour, and we have this.
Is that like a minor league team?
Yeah, I think it's a minor league team, and I think it's more like an exhibit. It's sort of like the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball, so more like an exhibition team. But I didn't know any of this. I just wanted a hat that said bananas because we have a song, Bananas, that we were going to be, I thought, we're going to wear bananas hats. And I went down to the Slugger Museum the next day and I said, I want a bananas hat. And we don't have them.
Heartbreaking.
I said, you're like, we don't sell those. I was like, well, I just had breakfast with a 12-year-old yesterday and he was wearing one that he bought here yesterday. So
you calling a 12-year-old a liar?
Yeah. And they say and I said, is there anybody else I can ask?
Speak to a manager about banana hats.
And then finally I got someone who said, well, the game is tonight. And so you can only buy the paraphernalia at the game tonight. And we're no longer selling it. So we were selling it yesterday, but we're no longer selling it today. And I'm like, surely I'm leaving on a flight in 2 hours to go on tour. I want to represent the Savannah Bananas with this hat in front of audiences in different parts of the world. Can I please buy a hat? And they were not budging. So That's a black mark on the Louisville Slugger Museum, I would say.
All right. What are we bringing to the potluck at your aunt's house?
Oh my gosh. Well, we had a gathering. We had kind of a wake gathering because my aunt died on January 20th.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So over the weekend, we had a family gathering at our house, and the stuff that we got in preparation for it, we got rotisserie chickens from Red Hog Butcher Shop just down the street here. And then my aunt from my mother's side of the family, Terry, she contributed a tray of cookies from Plains Bakery. Plains spelled PLEHN''S. It's been around for over 100 years, and they have my favorite iced cookie. So these are likely things that we might bring. My wife is also.
Wait, how big are these cookies?
Like that.
Okay.
Ish.
You can have 2 or
you don't
one?
Want 2.
You want
yeah.
One. Okay.
The cookie itself is very fluffy and light and not sweet at all. And then it's covered with a very sweet icing, which combines into this magical thing.
I'm having 2.
Yeah, and then my wife bakes bread. So we're also usually bringing bread to any given, or salad. She makes mind-blowing salads. So we'll bring those to potlucks.
That's awesome. Okay, this was a contribution, and it's the last question. This is a contribution from Liz Dutton. What are you wearing to the Derby?
I've been to the Derby a handful of times, much more satisfying, especially increasingly as the Derby expands and becomes more just like you're entering into a dystopian like you're entering the Death Star, kind of the Death Star with big hats and mint juleps. So more likely most Louisvillians go to derby parties, which are everywhere. But we still dress up for the derby parties. And there was a woman named Sarah. I'll remember it as soon as we're off here, but she was a haberdasher. She's moved. I think she might've moved to Columbus. She moved up north somewhere, and she made a beautiful hat. This sort of an orangey straw hat with a pink hat band, kind of cross between a Panama and a fedora, but made of straw. And that's my go-to derby hat. And then now, me, wife and daughter will try to come up with some complementary colors, and usually some sort of a suit. Yeah. Usually, even if we're biking 3 miles to a derby party, we'll get decked out and as fancy as we can go.
Nice. Will Oldham, congrats on the new record. It's so good. I hope.
Thanks.
I hope all your dreams come true. You made all my dreams come true today. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. Thank you.
What can come from, like, I've been, because I've been doing so many I have so many conversations about this record, and I appreciate so much about the record. And I think, what do we want the life of a record to be these days? Well,
I'm going to learn the song Our Home.
Oh, good.
And I'm going to play it for our baby once it's due in June.
All right. Congratulations.
Thank
good.
you.
Good. I mean, that's a good thing. Oh man. Along those lines, also the last thing that came, last summer we did this record that was a couple of Lungfish covers, me and Nathan Salzberg and Tyler Trotter. Tyler Trotter is one of the co-owners of Grail House, where we'll get coffee. And Nathan Salzberg is a marvelous, magical, folkloric and folk music brain. If you've never spoken to him, you might want to speak to him. He's a fun, deep conversationalist.
Nice.
But he has a little one, and there's a band called Lungfish that was out of Baltimore, DC area, more or less defunct now, but their songs were all sort of geometric guitar shapes repeated, so that they felt, I don't know. He would be rocking his child to sleep, tune his guitar a certain way, open, and then play Lungfish songs with his other hand while he's like rocking the baby. And then he thought, oh, maybe we should make a record like this. So he brought 2 Lungfish songs that would normally be 3 minutes, and then we played 20-minute versions of them so that you could rock your child to sleep listening to them. The intention is that they were meant to be lullabies. So recommending
excellent.
some further listening.
Great.
It's named after the 2 songs. Hear the Children Sing The Evidence.
Okay, I'm going to go look those up right now because I got a playlist going. Hope they're on Tidal.
I do too.
All right, cool. This episode of Basic Folk was produced by Anthony Cabrera. Our music composed by Dietrich Strauss. Basic Folk is a production of the Bluegrass Situation. You can find all of our episodes there. You can check out basicfolk.com, go to folkalley.com or Folk Alley's mobile app. Listen on SiriusXM's app by searching for Basic Folk, or you can check us out wherever you get podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with a friend? Like that college DJ that was always listening to much cooler music than you, and you would listen to their radio show and be like, whoa, this music is so cool. And then you'd go home and you listen to your dorky music. But now 20 years have gone by, and the music that they listen to and the music that you listen to are actually pretty cool. So maybe they would appreciate hearing from you in the first place, and you can reminisce on Ani DeFranco and early Tegan and Sarah and Bonnie Prince Billy and Azure Ray, and everyone will just love it so much and get along. Send it to that person. Okay, thanks for listening all the way to the end. You are very special, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye!